planning on changing the world just like me. You could be the chairwoman and I'll be the trustee. Let me give all to your benefit. Then I'll get blessed out my deficit.
Hello, hello. This is Tangelle Johnson with Your Corporate IQ. I am your host.
And I'm your co-host, Lachez Solage.
Lachez, you know what time it is. Do you know what time it is, girl?
Yes!
That's right. It's time to put them heels on, girl. Everyone needs that theme music when they're getting ready for corporate, makeup done, hair done, pearls on. I see you got your pearls on. So for all the listeners out there, in the words of Q-Tip, high, low, or even open toe, put your heels on, baby.
Yes.
So, Lachez, before we start, I guess I should go ahead with a disclaimer. For all that are listening, let me state that the views expressed by Your Corporate IQ and our guests today are our own views and do not reflect the views of any company or organization. And so, with that said, thank you for joining Your Corporate IQ podcast, where we will discuss the pearls and the perils of corporate America with a lens from the people of color's experience. Today's segment is on the entrepreneur who goes to corporate.
Yes.
And in the words of Cortni Witherspoon, you better have a plan. So joining us as our guest today is Ms. Cortni Witherspoon, founder, creative director, brand design expert for Clever Doodle. Cortni has over 20 years of marketing and graphic design experience. Her current work helps large and small businesses by delivering creative solutions that drive brand awareness, increase perceived brand value, and promotes visual storytelling. Welcome, Cortni.
Wow.
Hey guys, thank you so much for having me.
Excited.
Welcome. We're so excited. We're so excited to hear about all the fantastic work that you're doing. And so with that, we're going to just jump right in. You ready, Cortni?
I'm ready.
Awesome. So let's start with, tell us about your journey before starting in corporate.
Okay, well, my background, after I finished college, I actually went to design school at a 2-year school in Atlanta that's actually really popular with creatives. It's called the Portfolio Center. It has since been renamed and actually joined Miami Ad School. So now it's a part of Miami Ad School. And while I was in school, I actually worked to pay my bills as a waitress at a jazz club that was pretty well known in Atlanta called Churchill Grounds. You ladies are in Atlanta where Tangelle is.
I am.
It was right on Peachtree Street across from the Georgian Terrace next to the Fox Theater.
Okay.
Yeah, so Churchill had a lot of people coming through, and that kind of started my career because I got to meet a lot of jazz musicians. And, I started, while I was still in school, I actually was doing like club posters, the Blue Note design, album covers, one of my greatest inspirations. So it was just nice to be surrounded by so much creativity from the musicians and then, working with them to deliver design. So I did that and got to work with some great people. Freddie Cole, I actually designed a logo for him. That's Natalie Cole's uncle, Nat Cole's brother. So that was great. And, so after that, I had a friend who worked for a major broadcast news organization, international broadcast organization in Atlanta. And I started doing some on-air design for them. One thing leads to another. Especially being an entrepreneur is a lot about connections. I had a friend introduce me did some work for the Department of Justice branding one of their conferences. So that was like my major first branding job, like 2 years out of school.
Wow.
So, so I lived in Atlanta. Then I ended up moving to New Orleans.
Wow.
Did some work for Dillard University, some other places while I was there. I worked for Make It Right Foundation, Brad Pitt's foundation, rebuilding houses after Katrina. And I did some work for them. And, you just keep building. Your name kind of gets out. Somebody needs something.
Yeah.
They call you. And before you know it, like you look back and you have this body of work that you didn't even realize you were amassing such a body of work. But, you look back and you've done all these things and it sounds great in 10 minutes. Like, wow, you did all these great things. But when it's happening, it's a slow process and you just keep building and, chopping away a little at a time. So, while I was in New Orleans, I got the opportunity to go and live in Israel. And I did,
Oh, awesome.
and I did some work for marketing work for the Ethiopian National Project there. And then it was time to come home. And of course, me being kind of the creative, artsy person that I am, had no plan. And a friend of mine, I was just like, make money, take a trip, make money, whatever. It was just that kind of living. And, and a friend of mine was actually working in Greensboro for some tiny airline that is now defunct. And, with North Carolina being first in flight, there are all these little airlines everywhere, right? So I was like, I just need to get back. Like, I need to come home and I don't have a job. And so she's like, come work for me. I'm going to be, because she actually was living in Qatar for a while. And she had found her way back and gotten a job like at the head of like uniforms or something for this tiny airline in Greensboro. And I was like, Greensboro, like I've never heard of that. And so she, and I came and I started working for her and I was designing like flight manuals, stuff like that, like tech writing and designing like these in-flight instruction manuals for flight attendants. And I said, I'm going to give myself 6 months and I'm going to DC or New York,
All right,
like a
DC.
bigger city, And so the airline was like going bust at around the 3rd month of my being there. And I was like, okay, so I don't have any money saved. So maybe I should try to get a job and, spend the next 3 months and just pocket all the money and go to New York or somewhere. Like I know people everywhere. I'll just go. Yeah. So I got this job with this European transportation company in Greensboro. And actually, when I got the interview, you guys, I said to myself, I'm going to go in and I'm going to ask for some ridiculous amount of money and they're going to tell me no, right? And then I have some excuse to feel sorry for myself and I can go sleep on my friend's couch in like New York or something. So I just remember sitting across, I had like 6 interviews. It blew my mind because I'm not used to this. I'm used to like people call, I do their work, I make some money, I go on a trip, all good. And I had like 6 interviews with all these directors and department heads, and they sent me this onboarding thing. First, I was like, wow, this is pretty impressive, But I was like, I'm going to go in and in order for me to stay in this city, not that it's a bad city, it's a beautiful city. it just wasn't what I had in mind. In order for me to stay here, I'm going to ask for not what I just need, but for what I want. And I was thinking they're going to tell me no, and then I can just go and finish living my dreams and tell everybody I tried and it didn't work out. And I set a number. And the woman in HR goes, okay, that sounds like reasonable. And I was thinking, wait, what? what? She said, she was like, okay, yeah. So we'll give you a call later. And they called later the day and they matched what I wanted and they gave me this job.
Wow.
Amazing. What an amazing adventure that you've described.
Yeah, this is just beginning because we haven't talked about corporate yet.
You're
We
right.
have more
Continue.
questions. We got more questions too.
So that's how I got to corporate.
Okay.
So
Nice.
yeah. So
Continue. Yeah. So that was your journey
okay.
to corporate. Great. I mean, what a journey from, it seems like so whimsical how you started. So I love that. So you're a creative person. So I love the whimsy that you took us through to kind
Right.
of get to corporate. And you're like, wow, it's just this amazing opportunity with such a large organization. So that's fantastic. I guess talk to me a little bit more about, or I guess we can move into Clever Doodle from here if we want to switch gears. You've done some brand work for large companies, as you've mentioned,
Mhm.
and the UN. So I saw that in your background. Talk to us about, kind of like your transition into creating Clever Doodle then.
So I had already been working kind of under my name. It was Spoon Creative for many years, but I was working more like an artist, right? Like I didn't really have a company. I called myself that, and that's what my website said, but people were still paying me under Cortni. They knew me as Cortni. Um, I wasn't I was building my brand as like a freelancer, but not as a
Hmm.
so when COVID kind of hit around 2019, right into 2020, I went ahead and incorporated because I had not left Greensboro yet. I was still there.
Hmm.
I am still here. And I went ahead and incorporated my company. I had a better understanding of how business worked, how I
Okay,
needed to work, what that
good.
needed to look like, what I as a business person need to look like, how I need to conduct myself. So corporate was helpful for all of that because as I said before, I was just running around kind of like an artist, you know? And I said, okay, a few things need to happen. I have a real understanding that corporate long term is not going to be a good fit for me.
Hmm.
I need to take what I am doing and make it into a business and make myself and my business into a product and a brand. And I realized that I had the skills. I had been doing it in corporate, you know. A lot of times I think that freelancers and small business owners don't really realize what they bring to the table. They think because it's not a corporate environment, it's not really worth anything. But when I took my skills to corporate, what I saw is that a lot of the stuff that it took a team to do, I have been doing. So I was really qualified to do this work and I incorporated and then I got hub certified and I started
Hmm.
doing things like answering RFQs. So that's that.
Perfect.
Well,
So,
I want to jump
um,
in. I want to jump in. I want to
jump
jump in.
in,
This
jump
is
in.
exciting. So this is a perfect opportunity for us to hear as an entrepreneur who walks into corporate. You mentioned that you identified the fact that this is not your long-term
Right.
goal,
Yes.
and you made an exit plan to leave to go start your own.
Hmm.
Um, what would be one pearl that you learned from corporate and one peril?
Okay. When you're working as an entrepreneur, and particularly if you have a small team around you or if you're working for yourself, you don't have to work with other people. You do work for other people, but I can only speak for myself. I was not equipped at that point to deal with so many different personalities. I had no idea about diplomacy and maybe how to deliver messages so that they are heard and how to agree and yet still do what I'm going to do. I mean, it's just it's working within a system. And I think that a lot of artists, you don't have to. You're creative on your own. Creativity is not something that's really shared. You kind of are creative. You kind of it can be taught, but for the most part, you're born with some creative gene. And that creativity, you don't share that with others. You just kind of feel it. And you can feel when something looks right. But what happens in a corporate environment is that there's so much consensus and collaboration that takes place that what may start out as your awesome creative idea gets funneled down to something that in no way resembles your intention. And I think that you have to be prepared to give up the way you like to work, how you like to work, the kinds of people you like to work with, the kinds of work you like to do. Sell your soul.
I mean, Courtney, I want to spend some time on this because I want to make sure that we understand your journey in a good way because I think it's a fantastic journey. So I think that what I'm interested in here, as you talk about that transition to that large corporation, you mentioned some things that you were intentional about. So I think it was one of those things you kind of stumbled into, but also there was some intentionality. So I guess one question I have for you is, what did you think you were going to get from a corporate experience? So when you decided to take the step from entrepreneurship to corporate, talk to us about the intentionality piece there and what you thought you would get from it. I get the sense that you had some ideas about that because you already mentioned that this is not a space that you're going to stay in for forever. So you kind of knew that early on. So talk to me about that.
I think what I was seeking was validation. You know, my mom still says to me, even after working with the UN, Justice Department, and all this stuff, my mom says, "What do you do? Like, what exactly do you do?" I mean, she knows that I'm a designer and that I had something to do with computer design, and she knows that I did some work for the UN. But I think, I mean, she's at an age where branding what it just even kind of as Black people, those were positions that weren't really open to us during like Mad Men era and advertising. This is something new that we're kind of getting into. So I think that I was looking for validation, uh, validation from my peers, validation just to say I have a job because because mind you, I was working. And one thing about being an entrepreneur is that I'm always working. I got married to my business partner, Raman, in October. We haven't had a honeymoon. We haven't left the city except to
Oh,
work.
wow.
We haven't, So I think
Congratulations.
though that when people hear what I do, branding and design and kind of this artsy thing, that I really was looking for validation from my peers. I see people on Facebook. Yeah, I'm in Paris on vacation, but they're buying houses and they're having kids and they're hitting these milestones that I had not. And I felt like, yeah, if I get a corporate job and I can, put on a suit and go to work, that I would be validated and. So that was one thing. And I think the second thing was for the finance to just make a nest egg. And to me at that time, a nest egg was like $5,000, whatever, because living the way I lived and my lifestyle, that seemed like a lot. So I was like, I'll put away $5,000. I can go to New York. Like it seemed, that's how I envisioned it.
Yeah, amazing. Talk to me about so you're at this corporation. So this is something new that you're trying. You're intentional about, hey, there's something that I want to get from this experience.
Yeah.
So what did you get from that corporate experience that you still use today? You've mentioned a couple of things, but what were some of the things that you would say were really useful during your time in corporate? So what did you really take from that experience?
Okay, so able to work better with people because I was used to working on my
Hmm.
own. I was used to working
Great.
for clients where they give me a directive and I execute. But actually having to work in teams and hear
Yes.
a lot of input. So that was very helpful. Also, things like punctuality, setting a schedule, keeping a calendar, things that, I don't think I ever did. Like now I need my calendar kind of to manage my life.
There
Whereas
it
I
is.
know other creatives who have not been in corporate, who, my husband, for instance, so now he's like totally into his calendar. But at first, because he's a fine artist and a muralist and all that, and at first he didn't have a calendar. And I was like, how do you function without a calendar? Not remembering I have functioned for 20 years without a calendar,
It's great.
Yeah. So, but there are things that corporate, it puts some structure to me.
Awesome.
Yeah, it kind of corralled this creativity into something that I know how to work with other corporate people. I know how to work with organizations. And I think that those are things that creatives, particularly who have never been to corporate, you're kind of just like loose energy, and it kind of gets you a little more contained, and that's helpful.
Awesome. I mean, that's crystal clear. It provided structure that helps you in your business today that you would not have had. You shared that other creatives don't have that structure, so it served you during
Yeah.
that time. And so, what
Mhm.
made you understand that, hey, this is just not a space that I'm going to stay in? Because you were getting the structure. Were you able to? Did you feel successful as a creative in that corporate space? That's the one question I have for you.
Um, well, I think going into it, my life had not led up. There had been nothing in my life that even said that I should have ever gone into corporate, So it wasn't like, I was on a corporate track and then, had an epiphany and decided this isn't going to work. I think that I wanted to fit that mold,
Okay.
but I never thought it would work. It never was something that I sought after except for the validation. And when I went there, I discovered that I was correct. Did I feel creative? Um, in some aspects, because I got to do creative things that I'd never gotten to do before, like experiential design, like branding events, for instance. So, one event, I got to, come up with this idea of how we would brand this event. And I decided we would have these walking bobbleheads as like movable signage. And we would paint a truck, a big truck, and wrap it and drive it up to Allentown. And that way the eyes and the impressions would be a form of brand. So I got to do projects that involved a great deal of money and to manage huge budgets, and they would pay for me. You want bobbleheads, walking bobbleheads, figure it out. Okay, fine. So I'll go to a puppet maker up, outside of Boston, and meet with her to make, so that's a huge jump from doing marketing for Dillard, just marketing materials. That's huge.
Right.
So in that regard, I felt creative. The way that I didn't feel creative is that there's always the ladder. So it became, I like it, but things could have been so much more creative. But I have a boss who has a boss who has a boss. And if they don't see my vision, it just
Right.
gets pushed aside. So I felt that I had the means to be as creative as I wanted on projects. But in another regard, I felt like my creativity was stifled.
I see. I see. The reason I ask you this question is that in your corporate IQ, when we talk about pearls, one of the things is being able to assess a corporate environment. And so you did that, right? You were able to assess that it's not for you, but you were able to also take those pearls, the gems from it, and then move on to creating your business. So that's the reason why I asked that question. So what are you most proud of in your work? And that could be in your total career. What are you the most proud of?
I guess it would have to be the UN work. Like aside from CNN, like I have friends who work at places like CNN, and and a lot of people get hired to do those things here in the States, because CNN was started in Atlanta and Turner and all that. I think with the UN being chosen to work and lead a team, which included the Secretary General,
Ooh,
um,
wow.
and to act as a subject matter expert, a team that I had never met before, a team that I had a call with on the phone kind of thing. And they said, we've looked at your work. We want you to work for us. And to be able to lead that and be in a position to be the subject matter expert where, although I was doing work for them, ultimately they left the creativity up to me. Or they didn't leave it up to me. Of course, there was consensus and, we all collaborated, but they trusted me to
Wow.
make those decisions and to provide like expert guidance. So, I mean, I feel like none of my friends can say that they've done work for the UN. So I feel proud of that.
Awesome. That's an amazing experience for sure. I mean, I
Yeah.
totally get that for sure, for sure.
Mhm.
And then what do you wish someone would have shared with you early on, like early in your career, if you could say, wow, I wish someone would have told me this, what would that be?
As a Black woman, I wish that someone had even told me that the kind of life that you want is possible and what some
Mm,
of those options are. For instance, I have a degree in English from Auburn University. And at first I wanted to go into theater. And my mom and dad were like, "No, we're not wasting our money on theater. Choose again." And I was like, "I don't know, English?" And they're like, "Yeah, that sounds like a great idea." Which now I'm like, why is that a great idea? Right? But um they said that, I think, knowing, because you can always be a teacher. you know, Maybe that English degree, you can take the LSAT and go to law school, or, so there were few options, I think, open to my generation. I'm 52. So my generation, I think our parents wanted us, they had been through the civil rights movement and all this kind of stuff. And I'm from Birmingham originally. And
wow.
I think my parents wanted something that was going to provide some security for me,
Hmm.
and a job like creative, anything just wasn't, they couldn't wrap their heads around that. I think
Sure.
that now the newer generations that are coming, younger people, they see Black women in positions of, you know, creative directors and brand designers, fashion designers, and all of it seems possible. I also wish that someone had told me that there are such great programs out there
Yes.
that we didn't know about. For instance, I speak a little French. France is one of my favorite countries, like ever. I've been there several times, been to Mont Saint Michel, been to Paris, been to, I don't know, everywhere. So, had I known that up until like 32, to 32 or 35, that there's actually, you can do like a program to France where you
Mm,
do like this teaching assistant, and it's through the Department of Defense or whatever, uh, one of the departments, but it like lets you do an exchange where you can go and like teach in France, and they kind of, you know, you apply through, I want to say it's the DOD, and you apply
okay.
them, and there are all of these interesting programs in the world that promote creativity. I think travel is essential. You you just kind of have to.
Yeah.
And I've
Yes.
been to, I don't know, so many countries. And I think that that also just kind of changed the way I saw myself. I saw my world. So I wish
Mm,
somebody had started me traveling sooner. Um, I think that that after I did start traveling at, my 20s, early 30s, started seeing the world, that also put me in a position where maybe that's why I used to just make money and then go travel without much thought to the house and the car and the position and all of this, because I saw that the world was such a big place. So, yeah, I just wish that I had known that there's so many things out there that could just help you reach your dreams, and that honestly, you can be in a position to live the kind of life that you want. I just wish someone had really instilled in me, like, you're creative, you want to do this, it's okay. Maybe corporate isn't for you. Maybe school isn't, like a 4-year college isn't for you. Maybe, so I just wish that we had known that. But I think that my parents did their best with the knowledge that they had, and that
sure.
now for all of us sitting here, like, we know that. So the
Yeah.
next generation will only be, that much more fortunate.
Yeah,
Oh,
absolutely.
excellent. Yeah. This is great information. Great information.
Yes, I love it. Well, thank you, for sharing your experience. It's an amazing journey that you've had and will continue to have.
Yeah,
Yes.
thank you.
Awesome. Yes. And oh my God, I've learned so much about you. I mean, obviously, Courtney, you're in my network and we've known each other a while, but I learned so many new things today. This is why we're doing this podcast. It doesn't just help the listeners, it helps us as well. I'm curious to talk to you afterwards about more of these programs too, because I want to know about stuff. I want to travel. My God. Well, thank you
Absolutely.
again for
Wait a minute.
coming.
I
Yes.
have a question. What about the golden? I have thoughts about the golden handcuffs.
Oh, oh yeah. Well, yeah, I know we talk about that all the time, especially in recruitment and being in corporate. There is a term called the golden handcuffs, and so yes, Courtney, share with us what your thoughts are about the golden handcuffs.
So this is my final thoughts. The golden handcuffs, it's real, because what ended up happening to me and why still in Greensboro almost 8 years later,
Wow.
had to do with the golden handcuffs. My whole point was to come back, touch American soil, save some money, and go about my business, right? And I'm still here. Although now I'm loving my life with my husband and we're doing what we like to do. For 5 years, I was stuck in corporate. And it wasn't that I wanted to be there, and it wasn't that it was a great fit. It was because once you see the money from a large corporation, money that as a creative, I wasn't sure I'd ever make money like that, And honestly, it didn't matter to me, because the people that I was around were other creatives. And as long as we had money to
Yeah.
get by and travel, we were good, right? But
Right.
so when you go into corporate and you see these people and they're like, "Oh, are you going to buy a house?" And I'm like, "Probably not. I don't know. I don't know where I want to live." And they really thought I was kind of crazy, like, "You're not going to buy a house? Like, what, you're not going to do this, you're not going to do that, and you don't have any kids, and and anyway, so again with the validation. So I went there to get validation, and then I needed more validation while I was there. And so I got
Mm.
a couple of promotions when I was there.
Mhm.
2 different jobs. I changed jobs. I was making really good, the single person 6-figure income, right? But I would
Sure.
look at my bank account and I'm waiting till the next payday. And I'm like, "Wait, what happened just a couple of years ago?"
Isn't that something?
Living on like nothing and being perfectly happy. And now I'm
Sure.
miserable
Right.
every day. Sunday nights, I can't sleep because I don't want to go to work on Monday. And I'm making this great money. and the money's gone. I'm making the money now to actually put aside the money for 1 year and move to New York and do all these things I wanted to do. But the more money I made, the more I needed to make, right? Because my lifestyle
Mhm.
changed along with that money. And then it became, the trips need to get bigger. And instead of staying in the neighborhood hostel in Prague, now
That's so
I want a hotel. And I want to go shopping, and it just changed. And what ended up happening was I lost myself,
mm,
and this company had golden handcuffs on me. I was making the money. It looked great from the outside. I was starting to get that validation. I could compete. I got approved for a mortgage, still didn't buy the house because I didn't know where I wanted to live. And then we hit COVID. But you need to be careful. You need to remember who you are. Because I
mhm.
can tell you, our company is doing well now, but collectively we're not making as much money as we were with me in corporate and him doing his thing. But we're so much happier. So if
That's
you're going
good.
to corporate, make a plan, save the money, don't spend the money, don't get caught up in keeping up with the Joneses and corporate people who are going to be there and are going to retire with their 401k.
Right.
If that's not who you are, don't get stuck there. But if you go there, don't be like me. Have a certain amount of money you want to make, have a certain time you want to leave, and stick to that. That's all.
Awesome. That's definitely good
Beautiful.
advice.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there you have it, folks. The golden handcuffs, straight from the mouth of Ms. Cortni Witherspoon. So with that said, remember to stay tuned for more episodes on your Corporate IQ podcast. We're interested in hearing from you. Please send us your topic suggestions and comments to info@yourcorporateiq.com, and like us and engage with us on your Corporate IQ, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And let's, build a great community together, helping one another. But before we go, Courtney, if people want to reach out to you and maybe have Clever Doodle do some work, or you personally, or ask questions, how can they get a hold of you?
Okay, yep. So if anybody needs branding or murals or even collaborative, creative team building projects, please reach out. They can reach me at Cortni, that's CORTNI, at cleverdoodledesign.com. And you can also visit our website at www.cleverdoodledesign.com.
Excellent.
Awesome.
Thank you again.
Thank you guys for having me.
Yes.
Thank you.
Until next time, stay tuned in.
High, low, clothes are open toe. You be looking good when you rock 'em, so put your heels on, girl. Your heels on, lady. Put your grind hard, you drive me crazy.